Welcome to Office 2013 video number 20. Hey, this is Excel Basics video number 2. And in this video, we want to see how to create net income projections table based on formulas and a chart. And we want to see the beauty of Excel. What's the beauty of Excel? Because we built our formulas here and our chart based on our formula inputs. $5,000 is what we assumed January revenues would be. If I change this in the assumption area, before I hit enter, watch the table and the chart. Enter. Everything updates. That's the beauty of Excel. Instead of assuming a revenue increase each month of 7.5%, we could just change it 5%, 0.105. And watch this before I hit enter. Instantly it will update. Enter. The beauty of Excel. Now, the beauty of Excel is simply when formula or chart inputs change, everything updates. And the beauty of Excel is based on what we learned last video. For the first time, we learned about the golden rule of Excel. If formula or chart inputs can change, like any of these inputs, we put them into a cell and refer to them in our formulas and charts with cell references. So let's go ahead and see how to create this. I've opened up a blank Excel workbook. I did save as. I saved it to our class notes for Excel. I named it Net Income Projections Video 20 Excel Basics 2. Hey, Sheet 1 is the default name. We don't like that, so I'm going to double click it. I'm going to type the year 2014, enter. Now I'm going to come up to cell A1 and type Net Income Projections, tab. Now I'm going to come up between A and B and change the column width. That cursor right there allows me to click and drag. And I'm going to drag right past the letter S. Now in cell B1, I'm going to type Jan. Control Enter. We'll take our selection cursor and move it right towards that fill handle. And when we see our angry rabbit, click and drag. Notice the screen tip. April, May. We're going to stop at May. G1, we'll type total. Enter. Now I'm going to come all the way back over here and in cell A2 type revenue. Enter. Expenses. Enter. Net income. Enter, enter. In cell A6 I'm going to type assumptions, formula inputs. Formula inputs means those are the numbers we're going to use in our formula. All of our formulas and charts will be pointing towards these. Assumptions means for our budget or our projections, these are just going to be our starting numbers. We're allowed to change these so our assumptions can change. Enter. And we're going to type start January revenue, enter. Revenue increase, enter. I wrote abbreviated here, expense as a percentage of revenue, and then enter. Now, I'm a bad speller, so I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut to spell check, F7. It says, do you want to go to the beginning of the sheet? Yes, I do. Oh, looks like I misspelled revenue change. Oh, and income. That one I'm going to ignore all. OK. Now, let's do some formatting, some stylistic formatting. I'm going to highlight the labels at the top, and then using Control, I'm going to highlight cells not next to each other. We've done this a lot back in PowerPoint and Word and Windows Explorer and email checking. But here, we're using Control to highlight non-contiguous cells. Ooh, I have my ribbon hidden. How do I unhide that? Well, if you click in 2013, you can actually work for a while here. And then once you click back in the cells, it will collapse again. I'm going to select fill color, some dark fill color, some light font color. And now when I click back in the spreadsheet, it collapses. I'm going to uncollapse this. Either right-click that Home tab and collapse ribbon, or you can use the keyboard Control F1. Control F1 is a toggle on and off. Hey, we're going to use our keyboard. Remember our keyboard to highlight the current table? Control asterisk. Now let's go up and do borders. I'm going to click in cell A1 and Control B for bold. Come down and we'll select A6 to B6. Add fill red, font white, and instead of all borders, I'm going to go to the drop down and say outside border. It won't put a line right there. It wouldn't put one here anyway because there's text over it, but just in case we change the column width, we don't want that line there. Now, Control asterisk. Oh, look at that. There's nothing in this cell, so in this case, I'm going to use my mouse. Now I'm going to use all borders. Our starting revenue will be 5,000. Enter. Our assumed revenue percentage increase for each month will be 0.015. And our expense as a percentage of revenue will be 0.75. Now at the end of the video, I'll come back and I'll show you why we use 1.05 for a revenue increase of 5%. I'll show you that at the end of the video. Hey, we can format this. We can come up to the number group. We're adding number formatting. Now watch this. There's a 5,000 there and a 5,000 up in the formula bar. But watch what happens when I apply either currency or accounting. They both add dollar signs, and we'll talk about the differences later in the class. But let's just apply currency. Ooh, it puts up a fence or a railroad track. Hey, that just means you're squishing me. Give me some more room. So you have to come up to the column header between B and C, and when you see that cursor, you can click and drag. Now notice, that's pretty awesome. That means currency number format put in a dollar sign, a comma, a point, and a 00. I didn't have to type any of that in. That's pretty cool. That's a big time saver for entering data. But look up in the formula bar. What's really in the cell is 4 characters, 5000. Remember the disconnect. What we see on the surface of the spreadsheet is called number formatting. What's underneath can be different. Now let's highlight both of these, and we can add percentage number format. Now our formulas will work no matter what kind of formatting we have. I'm going to come up with those two highlighted and select percentage number format. It simply adds a facade. Those decimal numbers are still under the number formatting. Those are the numbers in the cell, and all of our formulas will use those when they make their calculations. All right, now let's start our formulas. This whole table is going to be formulas. It's going to be so cool. Everything's based on just these 3 numbers. All right, so our starting January revenue, equal sign, and click on starting January revenue, tab. Now, for each successive month, we need to increase by 5%. So equal sign, 1 cell to my left, times B8. I could have had a B8. Tab. Let's do the same thing here. I'm going to highlight all of the columns at once. And I'm going to point between B and C, or you could point between whichever one you want and click and drag. Click and drag. Notice that is a great trick because it changes all of the columns to the exact same width. It adds a nice uniformity to the report. All right, so I'm going to continue with my formulas. Equals 1 cell to my left. Notice if we're going each successive month and increasing by 5%, you always have to look at last month's revenue times B8. Tab. Equals 1 cell to my left times B8. Notice every formula is using B8. Equals 1 cell to my left times B8. Notice redirect mode, right? I clicked in the wrong cell, but no problem. If the dancing ants are still going, you still can redirect. So there's got to be an easier way, and we did learn this for the first time last video. So let's delete just the subsequent months, not our first month. I'm going to use delete key, not right-click delete. We saw last video, if you right-click delete, that gets you into trouble, so I'm using delete key. That's just delete content. So I'm going to click back here and recreate that formula. Create a more efficient formula. Equals 1 cell to my left. Remember, as we copy this, the formula always has to look at the previous month, so that's called a relative cell reference, times B8. And what do I have to do to tell the formula, hey, formula, lock on B8, so when I copy the formula, it doesn't move relatively. Watch this. If I Control Enter and copy this over, and this is a great way to teach yourself how. 0, that's not what I wanted. Click in the cell where you get the result you don't want and hit the F2 key. F2 puts it in edit mode. Oh, relative cell reference. 1 to my left and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 below. So if I copy this all the way over, which is common when you're making spreadsheets, click in the last one and hit F2. This is called Range Finder, and clearly it shows you that you have the wrong cell references. So I'm going to come back to C2, F2, and remember what we said last video, your cursor's got to be touching somewhere, and then hit F4. The F4 key puts those dollar signs in. Those dollar signs, there's 2 of them, column reference B and row reference 8. Both of them are locked. That means no matter where I copy this formula, it's locked. Control Enter, and now I copy it over. Now, anytime you copy a formula through a range, to see if it's working correctly, click in the last cell in the range and hit F2. Oh, that's beautiful. It got April's revenue, and it multiplied it by 1 plus 5%. And we have a relative cell reference times an absolute cell reference. Enter. Let's create our next formula. Expenses. Now, the way budgets work a lot of times is accountants figure out what expenses as a percentage of revenues are. They actually look at past accounting data, and the accountants have figured out, hey, on average, for budgeting purposes, expenses are 75% of revenue. That means every dollar that comes in, 75 cents of that $1 gets used up in expenses. All right, let's click in cell B3, and here's our formula. For every single formula, we're always going to need to look at directly above me the month's revenue times this B9, 75%. All right, so you ready? Equal sign. Relative cell reference 1 above me times B9. Now I need to lock this when I move to the side, so I hit the F4 key. Now anytime you're copying the formula, that's when you need to think about whether you need relative or absolute. Control Enter, and I'm copying it. So I point to my fill handle, and when I see my angry rabbit, click and drag. Click in the last cell, hit F2 to verify. Range Finder, the color coding, the beautiful color coding of Range Finder shows us that yes, we got revenues directly above me, and we're locked on that 75%. Enter. Now we can create our net income formula. Net income is revenues minus expenses. Now remember, we got to think about what kind of cell references, and we are copying this to the side. In every single one of these cells, we're always looking 1, 2 above to get the month's revenue, minus 1 above to get the expenses. So in this case, when we come back to B4, we do equals 2 cells above minus 1 cell above. And look at that. That'll work. When we enter it and copy it over, the blue and the orange box will be in exactly the correct position for each month. Control Enter. Point to my fill handle with my angry rabbit and click and drag. Click in the last cell, F2 to verify. Looking good. Enter. Now our total, we can simply click in G2. Our keyboard for the auto sum is Alt equals. We look at the dancing ants. It looks like they guessed right. Control Enter. Now we can double click and send it down. Click in the last cell, F2. Wow, that is looking beautiful. So now we have our whole table based on formula inputs. If I change the starting January revenue to 7,500, instantly everything updates. Now I'm going to change it to 10,000. Instantly everything updates. Control ZZ. Next, we want to build a chart. And what we want to show is the net income for each one of the months. So watch this. We're going to use our control trick. Highlight the months, not including the total, and then hold control, and let's get our net incomes. We have some labels and some numbers. Now we can go up to Insert. And in the Charts group, we can go and get our column button. I'm going to select this one right here. Instantly, we have a chart. Now, I'm going to delete this and show you two keyboards. We have our data selected. On most computers, the default chart is the column chart. Later, near the end of this class, I'll have a whole video on all sorts of things about charts, and I'll show you how to change the default chart. But the default chart is column, and if you want the default chart on this sheet, the keyboard is Alt F1. Alt F1. If you want, and I'm going to delete this, if you want to show the chart as a new sheet, you hit F11. And that puts it as a new sheet. We'll go ahead and keep that one there. I'm going to come back over here. Alt F1. Now that keyboard is, if you're not a person at work who's creating charts all the time, then you just forget that keyboard. But if you're creating charts day in and day out, that is a cool keyboard. Now I'm going to point to the corner and click and drag. And then I'm going to notice the diagonal arrow means you can resize it. This is the move cursor. We've already seen that cursor in regards to cells. All right, I'm going to try and move it in here. I'm going to point to the corner and click and drag and make it a little bit smaller. Now you want to immediately notice, look at that. If I click away from the chart and then click back on, it's got the same range finder. That's why the chart updates. It looks here, the formulas are looking here. So it's linked. Anything we change here, boop, changes it here and then here. Now this is a chart. We're using Excel 2013, and charting is totally different than earlier versions. Now when you select the chart, you can see Chart Tools, and there's two ribbon tabs. There used to be three. 2007 and 10 had three. It's missing the Layout tab. They took a bunch of the things from the Layout tab, and they actually brought it closer down to the chart. Right here. Now before we just look at a couple basic things, I want to look at this chart and remove some stuff. Now clicking in a chart sometimes is tricky. If I wanted to delete those horizontal lines, it's like hard to do. So if you have selected anything in the chart, you can actually use your arrow keys. I'm using my up arrow, and it cycles through all the different elements. When I see my horizontal lines selected and I want to delete them, now I can hit delete. Another way is if you want to come up to the Format tab, you can use the drop down. So this is in the current selection, the drop down, and select whatever part you want. So the chart title or whatever part you'd like. I kind of like clicking and using my arrow keys. Once I see the thing I want, I can either format it, move it, or delete it. I'm going to use the delete key because I want to get rid of those lines. Now I'm actually going to delete this vertical axis here too, because I'm going to add labels to the top. Delete. Now I want to add to the top of each column the actual number. So we can come over to these elements to the right, and the plus actually replaces the layout ribbon that's been removed. Many of the elements we used to add to charts are now under the plus. So we can simply come over here and data labels. Notice that this is a live preview. I'm going to check data labels. Now instantly, I'm going to click this plus. We can see it's kind of crowded. But let's learn a cool trick. Up here in the table, if we add any number formatting to this table, that'll be reflected down here in the chart. So home ribbon, number group, and I'm simply going to decrease the decimals. For this projections, we don't need to the penny anyway. That's looking perfect. Remember, that's a number formatting. It just changes what we see on the surface. So we have labels on the top and our columns. Now this chart title, click the chart title, and there's a few ways you can change the text. You can actually click inside and with your I-beam highlight it and type. But notice that it's a dashed line when I'm actually editing the text, and then click outside. Control Z. Another way is when you come over and select it and you see that solid line, you can actually just start typing. But notice when I type, I don't see anything when it's a solid line. But look up at the formula bar. There it is. It appears up in the formula bar. Now when I hit Enter, sure enough, that registers a chart name also. Control Z. Still another way. Notice that all of these, if I click here, we can see that this is connected. So if I change any of the source data, the chart will update. Well, the title by default is not linked, but you can link it. Select the chart, and when it's a solid line, simply go up to the formula bar, and we can make a formula in the formula bar. And all it is equal. Click on the cell with the label you want for your chart title. Notice it has the sheet name and the cell reference locked. When I hit Enter, instantly my chart title is linked. If I were to come over here and change this, that updates instantly. Control Z. The last thing we want to do this chart is we want to select the columns, and we can do formatting. Now there's some built-in formatting here, and you can scroll through this list. Oh, look at a bunch of options, including color. This is like quick style. I want to open up a more detailed dialog box. Oh, wait a second. In earlier versions, you could open up the format. This is called a series because it's got the numbers. Format series dialog box. But now they have task panes. And the way you get to it is you can right-click Format Data Series. Also, any chart element. If you remember your keyboard shortcut to open up the Format Cells dialog box, Control-1, that works on any chart element. So if I select the columns and use Control-1, that opens up the new 2013 panes. Now, if we want to use this pane, we have to first look up at the top. Here are the series options. Here are text options, which we don't have here. Or here is the paint bucket. If I want to change the color here, I can use the paint bucket. Fill. And down here, I want to say vary colors by point. And just like that, I've varied the colors by point. Now you have to close this task pane. That is just a small introduction to charts. Later in this class, we'll learn a lot more about charts. Now, one last thing before we see this absolutely amazing thing we created. I want to click and drag this, and I want to try and get it as close to the edge, meaning right there. I want it to come right to the edge. And also, I want it to snap to this edge. Well, instead of pointing to the corner and just clicking and dragging, if you hold the Alt key while pointing to the corner, it snaps exactly to that edge. And I can do the same thing. I'm holding Alt, and then I click, and it snaps right to the edge. So now it's fit perfectly within those cells. Now we want to test this. Let's just check this out. 7,500. And before I hit Enter, I'm just going to watch this table in the chart. Enter. Everything updates. We're going to change our percentage. It's just not 75%, it's 65. And watch, I'm going to type 6, and that percentage symbol is there, which means the cell has already been formatted. So I can type 65% and Enter. Everything updates. Now we have to add some page setup. So we go to Page Layout, the dialog launcher, or if you remember the keyboard, if you do this all the time, we're going to use our Alt. So Alt, I hit Alt, I see that it's P to get to Page Layout, and then SP to get to the dialog launcher. By the way, that's the same keyboard as in Word for page setup. I'm going to say landscape. And why am I choosing landscape? Because it looks like it's wider than it is tall. When I click landscape, I'm just going to guess here and say 115%. Come over to margins. I'm going to center it horizontally. Header and footer. Come down to the bottom. Select that built-in page 1 of question mark. Custom header. Now notice this is net income projections for 2014, and this might change if we copy it over. So I'm going to just write Projections tab, and I'm going to click on the icon for insert sheet name, and then tab, and then business name, Boom Inc. Now I'm going to click OK. Sheet, I'm going to come over to Sheet and set the print area. Click in Print Area and click and drag in the spreadsheet. A1 to G13. Click OK. So I've done my page setup. Control P to check it out. Wow, that is beautiful. Now let's do our trick we learned last video. I want to copy the sheet, so I point to the Sheet tab. I hold Control, click and drag up. I see the plus means I'm copying the sheet. I let go of my click on the mouse. I do not let go of Control. I'm still holding Control. So it's Control, click, let go of the click. Now I double click and rename 2015. I change whatever assumptions. Control P, just like that. It has the new year and all of the new numbers in our table and our chart. Escape. Now we want to come back over to this 2014. And I mentioned that I would talk about what 105% means, or what the number underneath 1.05 means. Now let's come down here. I'm going to click in cell A16. I'm going to start out with a simple example. We'll have a start amount. I'm going to type 100. I'm going to come up to the home ribbon, and in the number group, I'm going to add some currency number formatting. The increase will be 0.05. Now, when we take 0.05 and multiply it by a dollar amount, that means we're going to take 5 pennies for every $1. Now, you could easily format that. Off to the side, I'm going to make a little formula and point to that number and get that number. Come up to the drop down in the number group and apply percentage. So either one of these will get us the same result. Now, let's calculate the increase amount. And our increase amount will be equals actual decimal or percentage change times the 100. Now, that'll give us $5, right? 5 pennies for every one of those $100 gives us $5. Now, what we look at here applies equally for a decrease. Here, we just happen to be increasing. Now, our end amount will be, well, we're going to add, that's the amount we started with, and we're going to add our increase up. Now, this is different than what we did above, but now we want to look at how to do this calculation longhand. Well, if we were doing this, we would say, hey, or what we did in this problem here is we said, hey, give me $100 plus the $100 times our 0.05. OK, so we could have done it that way, right? Well, this would have given us 100 plus, well, 100 times 0.05 is 5. And finally, we would have ended up with 105. Now, when you type a number into Excel, of course, the default alignment is to the right. This is all text because we have some other symbols besides numbers. If we wanted to display this as text, we could actually enter a number with a lead apostrophe. Now, that's a different way of doing it than the way we did it above. Now, I want to rewrite this down here 100 times. And in open parentheses, we're going to do 1 plus 0.05. Now, will this give us the same results as up here? Yes. And in fact, the way the distributive property works, that means we have multiplication times something in parentheses. 100 times 1 plus 100 times 0.05. So I'm going to write that down here. So times 1 plus 100 times 0.05. All right, so this is getting close to what we have up here. Well, of course, we could rewrite this just like the rest of this. I'm actually going to come over and close this and scroll down here a little bit. Now, look at this. We started with this distributive property, 100 times 1 plus 0.05. We distributed it in, and then we got the same thing, the actual original amount plus the amount of the change, and we got 105. Now, this is the key here, because a lot of times when you're building formulas, you're just given the number 1.05. And you expect to know that that's the same as 1 plus some decimal or percentage change up or down. Now here's the cool thing about looking at it this way is 100 times the 1 is the original amount, 100, and 100 times the 0.05, well, that gives you the extra change. So when you see this, and let's do our little calculation over here. I'm going to move this. I'm going to take my move cursor. Start 100. Apply some number formatting like currency. We call this increase. This is often called rate. The rate. That means 1 plus whatever the percentage or decimal changes. And then the end amount would be, oh, just what we got before. All right, so anytime from now on when you see 0.05, just remember the 1 represents the original start amount, and then whatever the decimal is, that's the percentage or decimal change. All right, in this video we saw how to build formulas and charts based on formula inputs. We saw the beauty of Excel. We can simply change something and instantly everything will update. And we applied our golden rule. If anything in the formulas and charts can change, we put it in the cells and refer to it with cell references. All right, we'll see you next video.